Welcome, everyone, to this Historical Explainer. Today, we're diving into what I can really only describe as a dark, centuries-long historical thriller. We're going to look at exactly how the Orthodox, or what's sometimes called the Peter branch of early Christianity, systematically eliminated its Gnostic competition. It's just this incredible, massive story of shifting power, and together, we're going to map out the exact anatomy of how an entire alternative spiritual movement was, quite literally, erased from the map. Now, you might be wondering about the central mystery we're trying to solve today. How exactly does a pacifist, heavily persecuted sect evolve into a ruthless, imperial police force? I mean, it's a staggering transformation, right? And obviously, this didn't happen overnight. It took several centuries, gradually escalating from heated intellectual arguments all the way to state-sanctioned terror. To really grasp this, just think about the sheer irony of our story here. Early on, you have the Christians. They're illegal, they're hunted down, they're hiding in catacombs. But then, fast forward to the 4th century, and that exact same proto-Orthodox church is suddenly state-backed. They're incredibly well-funded, and they're actively supported by Roman legions. It's a complete 180. So let's look at exactly how this staggering inversion happened. Okay, let's dive right into the timeline to get the macro structure of this 1,600-year erasure. We start around 180 AD with the writings of Bishop Irenaeus. Then we jump to a massive turning point in 313 AD when Emperor Constantine actually legalizes Christianity. By 367 AD, things take a dark turn with Bishop Athanasius's book-burning orders. And finally, we end up at the miraculous discovery at Nag Hammadi in 1945.
Phase 1. The War of Words. The invention of the heretic.
So, back in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, these proto-Orthodox bishops didn't have the physical power of armies yet. They couldn't just arrest people. So they had to fight their Gnostic rivals with words and propaganda. And what's really interesting here is their greatest weapon, the concept of heresy. Today we kind of think of heresy as an objective religious misstep, but historically, it was entirely manufactured as a political tool. Around 180 AD, bishops like Irenaeus of Lyon started writing these massive, hateful tracts. He essentially created a completely new concept. If you disagree with the bishop, you aren't just intellectually wrong, you are a literal tool of Satan. And the tactics were brutal. Historical records show Irenaeus deliberately fabricated some truly horrific rumors. We're talking claims that the Gnostics held wild sexual orgies, that they ate children, that they secretly worshiped demons. The ultimate goal here was total dehumanization. By weaponizing these lies, Irenaeus absolutely terrified everyday ordinary Christians into avoiding the Gnostics entirely. People were just too scared to even speak to them.
Phase 2. Alliance with the State. The 4th century power shift.
Everything changes with the arrival of Emperor Constantine the Great. This is a massive turning point in world history. When he legalizes Christianity, he isn't just doing it out of the goodness of his heart, he has a very specific political goal. He needed a unified social glue for his sprawling empire. And glue, by definition, has to hold things tightly together. So he didn't just legalize all Christianity, he specifically chose the proto-Orthodox bishop-led branch to be the official version. Why? Because it had the strictest, most controllable hierarchy. It was literally the perfect administrative fit for an emperor trying to consolidate power. Watch how quickly things escalate once they get that power. Step 1. The Orthodox bishops secure what is essentially a bottomless state treasury. Step 2. They gain the full backing of the Roman legions. And Step 3. They immediately turn this newfound absolute political power against their former brethren in faith. Almost overnight, the persecuted officially become the persecutors. Phase 3. Criminalization and book burning, the systematic erasure of memory. By the time we hit the end of the 4th century, the escalation continues. Emperor Theodosius I makes Orthodox Christianity the only legal religion. Suddenly, intellectual disagreements are actual state crimes. Enter Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria. In 367 AD, he issues this incredibly strict pastoral letter, declaring that alternative texts, like the Gospel of Mary for instance, are poisonous heresies, and that they must be immediately destroyed. Now, the crucial point here really hinges on the number 27. In that exact same letter from 367 AD, Athanasius listed exactly 27 books. Those are the 27 books that make up the New Testament as we know it today. By codifying these specific texts, he officially and legally outlawed every single other manuscript that didn't make his list. What followed was a terrifying state-sanctioned erasure. Roman emperors issued edicts making the possession, copying, or even just reading of heretical texts punishable by death.
Think about the sheer terror of that for a second. We have actual historical records of Roman armies actively searching through private homes. Entire libraries were physically burned to the ground. If a Gnostic gospel was found in your house, you lost your property, and yeah, very often, you lost your head.
Phase 4. Physical terror. Fanatical monastic strike forces.
But official Roman channels apparently weren't enough. Violence soon erupts completely outside the boundaries of the law, mostly in Egypt and the Middle East. This introduces us to the Parabolani. These were groups of fanatical, typically uneducated Orthodox monks. Instead of living in, peaceful contemplation, they effectively operated as the militant enforcer wing of the church. For all intents and purposes, they were violent street gangs deployed to enforce strict religious conformity.
Armed with sticks, stones, and iron bars, these gangs would literally burst into the homes of suspected heretics. They violently disrupted Gnostic gatherings, they burned down their temples, and physically assaulted or lynched those who refused to accept the official faith. The narrative tension here is just unbelievable. The Gnostics were suddenly facing a very grim ultimatum: convert to the Orthodox faith, flee into the harsh desert, or die.
Salvation in Nag Hammadi. The resistance in a clay jar.
Let's move to how this builds to a truly dramatic act of rebellion. Amidst all this terror, when Bishop Athanasius' order to burn the books finally reached Upper Egypt, a group of unknown individuals, likely monks from a Pachamian monastery, decided to defy the most powerful men in the empire. They knew these ancient books held deep wisdom that just couldn't be allowed to vanish. So under the cover of darkness, in this incredibly suspenseful moment, they took these papyrus scrolls, carefully wrapped them in leather, sealed them tightly inside a massive clay jar, and buried them in secret under a cliff near the village of Nag Hammadi.
1600. Let that massive number sink in. That is the amount of years these ancient texts lay completely hidden. While the victorious Orthodox Church spent centuries telling everyone the Gnostics were just crazy demon worshippers, the true words of the Gnostics were resting quietly beneath the dry Egyptian sand, just waiting.
And then, in 1945, by pure chance, that jar was dug up. The Nag Hammadi library was discovered. For the first time in over a millennium, modern science could actually read the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Judas. Bringing this into the modern day, this discovery is just so vital because it finally exposed a 1,600-year-old historical cover-up. It shows us exactly how much the Orthodox victors manipulated the narrative of history.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. If an entire spiritual movement and its sacred texts could be successfully erased and buried in the sand for 16 centuries, what else have the victors of history hidden from us? Thank you so much for joining me for this historical explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity to look a little deeper into the past.